I always like to cover games with an interesting background, especially if it gives me an excuse to talk about something strange. I mean, the game here is hardly going to be the main event now, is it? But Super Trolley doesn't seem to be a game that holds all that much interest on the outside. It's a budget Spectrum title from the 1980s by Mastertronic, a studio renowned for many a game that, well, wasn't very interesting. But the story of how the game ended up getting made? Well, that's a doozy, considering that its existence is owed to the most evil man in the history of British television. It all seems so normal on the outside. Super Trolley is a game designed by a youngster named Andrew Collett. Big deal, surely. These were still the days of bedroom coding. Many a youngster was doing it. Back then, some of the people who made games were still in school when their first titles got published. To get published was a simple enough process. You make a game, you send it to a software house, and if they like it, they'll sign you up, and they'll pay you for the game. Simple enough. However, Andrew took a different approach. He thought his game idea was a good one, and so he decided to have someone fix it for him to have a developer make it. Ah yes, there he is, Mr. Black Magic himself, Jimmy Savile. An institution on British television for over 50 years, utterly celebrated in his lifetime, famed for his running, his Top of the Pops presenting, his many TV shows, the order to clunk click every trip, and all that charity work down places like Stoke Mandeville. A gift to the nation, if you will. When he died, the world of television stopped for a minute to bow their heads. The BBC even ran tribute shows dedicated to him, which in hindsight wasn't the best idea, considering what was to come. About a year or so after Savile's death, his full story finally came to light. Jimmy Savile was, for decades, a highly aggressive and prolific paedophile who used his position to prey on countless victims. Even down to his charity work in mental hospitals like Stoke Mandeville, which he saw as one of his favourite stomping grounds. And he was never caught, never so much as questioned. His headstone used to read, "It was good while it lasted." To some that felt like a suitable epithet at the time. Nowadays it feels like a punchline. Of course, all of this is well known. Jimmy Savile is the celebrity scandal, one that none of the recent cases can even come close to matching. Over here these days, even a whiff of such scandals can nuke your career. A lot of this is, indirectly, the aftermath of Savile, because the case of Savile is one of the greatest failures in the history of British justice and society, one that's hard to recover from. Here was a man who, for decades, was one of the most famous people in the country. He used that to abuse an untold amount of children, and he was never caught. He hid in plain sight. It's the old "no one will believe you" story made even darker. None of that's revelatory, but it's still one hell of a subject, especially considering that jokes and references to Savile's proclivities didn't just happen, they were common.
8-year-old girls love Jimmy Savile though, don't they? And of course... Anyway, I won't go on.
Yeah. Yeah, he loves her slot, that's what I'm saying.
I haven't been this excited since Jimmy Savile came to our open day at school and sat on my face.
Oh, God! Oh, I'm Jimmy Savile.
Yeah. And I'm Jimmy Savile.
And we're running the London Marathon.
I hope nobody dies.
If they do, Bagsy, I take them to the mortuary.
How's about that then, guys and girls?
Yes, it's an appalling slur on the moral rectitude of Sir James Savile, whose interest in children has always been entirely above board.
I mean, a friend of mine reckons that Jimmy Savile's a paedophile. Rubbish, he's a child bender. That's why he does all the fucking charity work, just to gain public sympathy for when his fucking case comes up.
Looking back, it's almost clear that people suspected something. Hell, he barely even tried to hide it, thinking that his status covered him in Teflon and ultimately being proved right. Who believes a girl from a mental institution over someone knighted by the Queen? You wonder how he managed to get away with it, and the answer is, well, it's ugly. Still something we struggle to face up to. And yeah, perhaps not something to focus on right now.
You used to be a wrestler, didn't you? Is that right?
I still am.
Oh, yeah.
I'm feared in every girls' school in this country.
Anyway, Jimmy Savile's main show was, of course, Jim'll Fix It, a classic late afternoon dealie where children write into Jimmy asking for something, say an opportunity to go youth hosteling with Chris Eubank, and then Jimmy sorts said kid out with what they want. Feel good television. Yeah, he abused some of the guests on this show too. And it was here where Andrew Collett's letter was read, and he had the chance to have his game made by Mastertronic. Alas, the actual footage from the show has been lost to time, or at the very least it's not on YouTube, and I kinda doubt that the BBC responds much to requests for Jimmy Savile footage these days. I can at very least date the appearance to the 12th of March 1988, according to Sinclair User, and if you've ever seen Jim Will Fix It, you'll know how this generally works. Savile reads out the kid's letter, we get some VT where the shell-suited horror man goes and gets to work, the kid comes onto the show and gets presented with the reward and Jim fixed it for me badge, try not to choke on his cigar smoke, probably best to stick close to your parents in the green room afterwards, job's a good un. While it would have been interesting to see the footage itself, yeah, we're just going to have to roll with it. And of course, we do have the game itself, and there is the connection. The man on the front is quite unmistakably Jimmy Savile. This is the only game to feature an appearance from him, at least officially, although not the only game to feature a disgraced UK celebrity as it goes. There'll be a time to get to others, I'm sure. The inlay promises a frantic round of feverish activities where if you make one mistake, you'll be out on your ears. We'll see about that, shall we? And naturally it makes mention of the game being seen on BBC TV's Jim Will Fix It. Anyway, seeing as this is ostensibly a video about a game, how is it? After all this build-up, surely we should expect something weird, a game that we probably shouldn't be playing at all, something cancerous filtered through the twisted brain of a one-off man mental. And so here it is, the game endorsed and made possible by the most evil man in the history of British television, it's Super Trolley.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Jeez, this game. It's terrible, but not in a way you'd necessarily expect. One great thing about video games is how they make magic from the mundane. Take something that sounds dull on paper and turn it into a game. Tapper, Cook Serve Delicious, Papers, Please, Euro Trucks, that sort of thing. Super Trolley doesn't do that. It takes the mundane and makes it worse. Basically, you are a shelf stacker in a supermarket, a literal dog's body, lucky if you're on minimum wage. You are given various jobs to do, mostly, of course, stacking shelves. You get an item, you have to price them, all of them, and then find the empty shelf they're supposed to be on. And that's basically it. There's not much else to this game. You remember Advanced Lawnmower Simulator? The game made by Your Sinclair as a joke where you play as a YTS junior gardener who invariably ends up getting killed? This game is like that, only it's decidedly not a joke. Our hero slumps around the shelves with the sort of depressed stride you'd expect from someone who's stuck in this simulation of menial labour instead of, I don't know, saving damsels, killing terrorists or something like that. There is one obstacle in his way, the horde of old cronies prowling around the store, getting in the way, who will get you fired if you bump into them too much. Other than that, well, you're stacking. It won't take long to learn where everything is supposed to be, so it's not like there's all that much challenge to the game. And yet, the RZX Archive playthrough of the game comes in at over 4 hours, with this single screen as your reward announcing your promotion to manager and the option to restart the game and let the cycle begin anew. The challenge doesn't come from the game itself, it's all about how long you can stand it. Sometimes different things do happen, and yet all they do is remind you of the misery of this job, the indignities it puts on you. You accidentally knock a bunch of tins over, pick them all up, go outside for a much-needed fag break, only to be told that you can't because some shoppers knocked the tins down, and so you've got to pick them all up again. You cannot leave until all the work is done, and guess what? The work is never done. Perhaps the worst of all was the announcement that a stray dog had entered the supermarket. You go around everywhere looking for the bloody thing, pick it up and set it loose. Yay! But now the next task comes in. Get a mop and clean up the puddles of water that the dog's left behind. Somehow I don't think water is quite the whole story here, is it? So yes, this is a game where one of the highlights is, quite literally, walking around a supermarket floor and cleaning up dog piss. It doesn't get much bleaker than that, folks. Super Trolley then is surprisingly something unique. It's worth noting that very few magazines actually reviewed it. It passed by with nary a mention, despite the connection to television. Maybe they just didn't know what to make of it. Maybe they thought it should be swept under the rug. Maybe, just maybe, they didn't want to hurt a child's feelings. I don't know Andrew Collett, of course, as much as it amazes me that a young kid, the sort of person who's supposed to be full of creativity and imagination, would come up with the idea for such a game. I wouldn't want to speculate. I mean, I'm sure this wasn't what he envisioned. Maybe it's Icon Design's fault, the developers. Maybe they decided to make the game this way. Maybe Mastertronic did it. Maybe, just maybe, Savile himself stepped in and demanded that the game teach the kids who'd buy it a few life lessons. Mainly that life's shit, you grow up, you get your head down, and then you die having achieved none of your ambitions, stuck in a dead-end job until you croak. That seems like the sort of thing he'd do. I really didn't know what to expect out of Super Trolley. I might have thought it to be a one-of-the-mill, shoddy, late-spectrum budget title, but I didn't expect this at all, this pain to life's miseries. Perhaps it's appropriate, really, that the game connected to such a horrible man would be this way, that it would be nothing but drudgery. Maybe there's a message in there somewhere. It is certainly a strange game. What was the end goal here? Honestly, I don't know. I don't want to know. I'm just glad that I avoided the game when I was a kid. It's so remorselessly grey and hopeless it would rob someone of their best years, for they would have seen the world for what it was before their time. And hey, Jimmy knew a lot about that, didn't he? And somewhere down there, he's smiling on all of it. For the man who had a hand in this would surely have no trouble calling a lake of fire home. Good night.
I'd never brought any harm to anybody. I've never bad-mouthed anybody. It sounds a bit yucky, but it's my nature, it's my lifestyle, and I never thought there was a profit in being bad. There might be a profit for a few days, a few weeks, even a few years, but sooner or later you get your comeuppance.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like it, please do like it, subscribe to the channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon, where you can join the list going down here. Anyway, for this video I'd like to thank the following: Adam Schaefer, Alex Stoko, Andrew Dalton, Andy Capt, Audie Sawley, Carly, Seth Lynn, Conformist, Daniel David Taylor, Dustin Cooper, Gary Pinkett, George Newton, Ghostly Spectre, Grafham Blackpool, Ian Roberts, James Idd, James Loveridge, Jason Durso, Jason Goy, Jason Leach, Jason Stevens, Johan Eriksson, Josh Jensen, El O'Brien, Lee Norris, ManagerSim.net, Mark Heslop, Mark Johnston, Martin Pataki, Nanette McCrone, Olaf Albeen, Pete Morris, Peter Jack, Peter Sidorn, Phil Taprog, Rachel Maxwell, Romeo, Ryan Wyatt Coleman, Sammy Lee, Seth Robinson, Simon Gulliver, Stephen Warner, Taylor Armand, The Unnatural, Tanyu J, Twisted Scroat, Vishar D, Yurka Operator, and Zach Roach.